Hello, welcome to week 2. Today I want to talk about assigning direct cost, allocating indirect cost using predetermined overhead allocation rates with single and multiple allocation bases. So how do companies assign and allocate cost? Remember that product costs include direct material cost, direct labor cost, and manufacturing overhead cost. Direct material costs and direct labor cost, they can be easily traced to products, and therefore direct material cost and direct labor cost are assigned to products. Manufacturing overhead cost, also called indirect costs, cannot be easily traced to products. Manufacturing overhead costs are accumulated in cost pools and then allocated to products. Managers need to know product costs to make planning and controlling decisions. The predetermined overhead allocation rate is the estimated overhead cost per unit of the allocation base. It's calculated at the beginning of the accounting period. The formula is total estimated overhead cost divided by total estimated quantity of the overhead allocation base. The allocation base is generally something like machine hours or direct labor, and it's sometimes total direct labor cost can be used as the allocation base. The first step in allocating overhead costs to products is to compute the predetermined overhead allocation rate. The predetermined overhead rate is equal to total estimated overhead cost divided by total estimated quantity of overhead allocation base. Sometimes multiple departments are used to produce a product, and multiple overhead rates can then be used to allocate overhead costs to products. A modification of the overhead allocation method using a single plant-wide rate is using multiple predetermined overhead allocation rates that have different allocation bases. This method is more complex, but it may be more accurate. The allocation process is the same, except now there are multiple cost pools and multiple allocation bases. Smart Touch Learning has 2 departments, and we calculate an overhead rate for each department. Different cost drivers or allocation bases are used for each department. The allocation base for the production department is machine hours, and the allocation base for the software department is direct labor cost. The total estimated overhead cost for the production department is $80,000. The department's total quantity of the allocation base machine hours is estimated at 20,000 hours. The predetermined overhead rate is $4. 80,000 divided by 20,000 hours. $80,000 divided by 20,000 hours. The manufacturing overhead costs for the production department can now be allocated to each model based on usage. The total estimated overhead costs for the department are $20,000. Smart Touch Learning's managers have compiled the following data for the software department's total quantity of the allocation base. Direct labor costs are estimated at $31,250. The predetermined overhead allocation rate is 64%, which is found by dividing $20,000 by $31,250. To determine the unit cost of the manufacturing overhead, we divide the total cost by the number of units. We can then add the manufacturing overhead unit cost to the direct materials and direct labor unit cost to determine the total unit cost. Now that we have completed an estimated cost per unit using the 2 different methods, let's compare the results. Using a more refined allocation system with multiple allocation rates shows the standard model costs slightly more than the originally thought, whereas the premium model costs less than was originally thought. The difference may not seem significant, but in today's competitive market, even slight differences can have an impact. So we have the standard model and the premium model. We have the total estimated cost per unit using a single plant-wide allocation rate. Under the standard model, $273.20. The premium model is $407.20. Using the multiple department allocation rates, we have $275.04 and then $399.84. And so the difference between those under the standard is negative $184, and under the premium, $7.36. Okay, so after you review this, I'm going to post a question in the discussion board. Please take a moment and try to address the question, and I will see you there.